San Antonio, Texas. Summer 1841. In the dim light of dawn, 35 horsemen, 20 Mexican citizens, and 15 Texas Rangers prepare for the ride ahead. Their mission is one of revenge, born out of many losses suffered in the spring of 1841 when Comanche raiders struck throughout the region, killing settlers, burning homes, and driving off cattle and horses. This violence was part of the broader conflict between Texas and the Comanche, a group whose raids had terrorized the southern plains for decades. The Comanche had long been a dominant force, using their mastery of the horse to launch swift and devastating raids deep into enemy territory. Despite the fragile relationship between Texas and Mexico, the Rangers, along with their Mexican allies and Lipan Apache guides, united for this shared mission. They set off to recover stolen livestock and fight to the death if necessary. Chosen for their numbers and extensive experience, the Rangers were prepared to lead. As the group rides out of San Antonio, they head southwest, tracking the raiders toward Uvalde Canyon, the last known location of the Comanche. Over just little more than a decade, the Comanche quickly became a formidable power in central Texas. Only a few groups, like the Texas Rangers and their native guides, had managed to engage the Comanche in their homeland with any success. However, such victories were rare, and the Comanche's relentless raids could not be contained. The brutality of these raids was unprecedented. Native tribes such as the Tonkawa, Karankawa, Apache, and others, along with Spanish settlers and Mexicans, faced violence never before witnessed. Entire communities were destroyed, families were slaughtered, and the Comanche terrorized the region like a storm that refused to subside. This was the price of centuries of oppression that had pushed the Comanche to the brink of survival by more powerful tribes. The Comanche's rise began when they encountered the Spanish and their horses. The introduction of the horse shifted the balance of power, making the Comanche unparalleled in horsemanship. They even developed their own methods of breeding horses to enhance agility and strength. The horse was essential to their dominance, positioning them as one of the most feared forces in North America. In 1841, the Comanche's tactics were unlike any other tribe encountered by American and Mexican forces. They fought from horseback, using their horses as weapons and rapid transport. Their raids were often synchronized with the full moon, so common in central Texas that it became known as Comanche Moon. At night, unsuspecting settlers or rival tribes were awakened by a whirlwind of violence and terror, with few survivors to tell the tale. Comanche warriors would strike without warning, traveling long distances from their base camps, sometimes hundreds of miles away. Their raids were swift and brutal, aimed at taking as much as possible and killing anyone who resisted. Men were usually killed on sight or taken prisoner to be tortured, part of the Comanche tradition of retribution. Women were captured and enslaved, often facing cruel fates as laborers and for exploitation. Infants were generally killed outright, seen as liabilities during fast-moving raids. This cycle of violence became the norm for decades. Despite efforts to halt it, the devastation continued unabated. In the late 18th century, Spanish General Juan Bautista de Anza brokered a peace deal with the Comanche in New Mexico, but this peace did not extend to the Texas frontier. The relentless raids endured, unchallenged by any significant resistance. Since San Antonio's establishment in 1718, the Spanish struggled to assert control over the lands north of the city. Their soldiers, settlers, priests, and missions constantly faced threats from the Comanche, who continued to be a powerful and relentless force. Violence in Texas and the rise of the Comanche. The settlers faced an unprecedented level of violence from native tribes, particularly the Comanche, who had emerged as a formidable force. Despite various attempts to control the situation, the Spanish were unable to halt the destruction that ravaged their settlements. By 1821, with Mexico's independence from Spain through the Treaty of Córdoba, the situation had not improved. Mexico found itself equally powerless against the Comanche, just as the Spanish had been. The Comanche were not an ordinary native tribe. They had evolved into a powerful empire, especially after acquiring horses from the Spanish. This acquisition granted them a significant advantage over their adversaries, enabling them to conduct seasonal raids that spread fear from San Antonio to the Yucatan Peninsula. Faced with the challenge of the Comanche's strength, the Mexican government sought to create a buffer zone of Anglo settlers along the Texas frontier. The expectation was that these settlers would bear the brunt of Comanche attacks, protecting the more populated areas of Mexico from devastation. However, this strategy proved futile. The settlers, frustrated by the Mexican government's lack of support, grew resentful. This discontent eventually ignited rebellion, fueling the Texians' revolt against Mexico. The Texas Revolution, which spanned from October 2, 1835 to April 21, 1836, resulted in Texian independence. Yet, this victory presented new difficulties, as the Texians were now responsible for defending their fledgling republic against the unrelenting Comanche raids extending from the Gulf of Mexico to present-day Oklahoma. To counter the threat posed by the Comanche, the Mexican government created mobile light cavalry units to patrol and protect the vast Texas frontier, leading to the establishment of the Texas Rangers. Although the concept of mounted patrols was not new, it took on a unique form in Texas during the 1830s. The term ranger first emerged in the 1590s, referring to a wanderer or rover. By the 1660s, it had evolved to denote mounted men assigned to police expansive, unsettled territories. Although the Texas Rangers were a new entity in the 1830s, they quickly became legendary. Their actions, both real and embellished, filled newspaper articles and dime novels, reaching audiences as far away as New York and London. In their early days, the Rangers faced numerous challenges. Primarily composed of young men in their 20s, eager for adventure and to prove their worth, the force was largely untested. They battled both Mexican troops and civilians, relentlessly pursued cattle thieves, and enforced their own brand of frontier justice. Though their reputation grew, it came at a considerable cost. The Rangers often found themselves overwhelmed by the violence they encountered and their lack of formal training. The Comanche, in particular, inflicted the most significant losses on the Rangers during their initial confrontations, with fatality rates surging as high as 50%. Those who survived bore the scars of brutal wounds and torment. However, these survivors emerged more determined and skilled. The harsh realities of witnessing fellow comrades fall in remote settings only intensified their resolve. The Rangers adapted quickly, honing their tactics and learning to fight and shoot with precision while mounted. They developed into a highly mobile strike force capable of penetrating deeply into enemy territory with relentless efficiency. The weaponry used by the Rangers underwent significant advancement. What started with basic single-shot pistols gradually transitioned to more powerful 5-shot revolvers with reloadable cylinders, providing them with a distinct advantage in battle. After years of relentless and brutal conflict, the Rangers evolved into a Spartan-like force, disciplined, skilled, and fueled by the instinct to survive. While they earned the admiration of the settlers they safeguarded, in 1841, the Texas Rangers were recognized as rugged individuals, molded by the harsh realities of frontier life. Absent their pivotal role, they would have felt out of place in civilized society. The Texas Rangers were far from the romanticized heroes depicted in tales. They were tough warriors, forged in the trials of conflict and necessity. The Texas Rangers were nothing like the formal military units of their time. They dressed in practical attire suited for the harsh Texas frontier. Many donned buckskin leggings paired with cotton shirts and wide-brimmed hats, while others chose a more unique style, wearing serapes and skin caps. Their clothing matched the rugged nature of the land they patrolled. Record-keeping and the latest fashion trends were not on the Rangers' minds. Known for their wild and often violent antics, they frequently engaged in drunken brawls where Bowie knives and revolvers were standard weapons. They resembled modern outlaw motorcycle gangs more than traditional law enforcement, characterized by unkempt hair, long beards, and a coarse manner of speaking. Despite their rough behavior, the Rangers held a deep loyalty to their leader, Jack Hayes. At just 24 years old, the Tennessean earned their respect through strong leadership and determination. Born in Little Cedar Lake, Tennessee, Hayes hailed from a prominent military family. His father, Harmon A. Hayes, fought under Andrew Jackson in the War of 1812. With his natural leadership abilities and military background, Hayes became a figure the Rangers were willing to follow, regardless of his youth. Jack Hayes's middle name, Coffee, was a tribute to John R. Coffee, a family relative who served as an officer during the Battle of New Orleans. Hayes arrived in Texas in 1836, eager to participate in the Texas Revolution, only to find that the conflict had already concluded. Instead, he embarked on the hazardous task of land surveying, one of the riskiest jobs on the frontier at the time. Land surveying involved traversing the expansive and untamed Texas landscape to mark boundaries for plots supposedly belonging to the new Republic of Texas. However, these lands were far from unoccupied. To the west of San Antonio and Austin lay Comancheria, the vast and formidable empire of the Comanche. At its height, Comancheria was far larger than anything the Texans could hope to claim. Venturing into Comancheria without the Comanche's explicit permission was tantamount to seeking certain death. Having observed survey parties from the Spanish and Mexican governments, the Comanche were acutely aware of the intentions of these newcomers. They had successfully repelled invaders for generations and would not allow any trespassers on their territory. Surveyors intruding into Comancheria were viewed as intruders seeking to seize land from the Comanche to sell to their foes. Many faced a grim fate. Skilled Comanche warriors, well-versed in dealing with invaders, captured surveyors and inflicted painful deaths, staking them to the ground and using burning coals as a method of torture while jeering at their cries. This was a grim reality for many surveyors daring to mark the land in the harsh and unyielding Comanche territory. However, Jack Hayes was not one to shy away from danger. His unwavering determination and strong spirit allowed him to traverse the treacherous frontier, making him one of the few who succeeded without falling victim to its perils. The surveyors who dared to enter Comancheria were regarded as intruders, carving up the land to sell to the Comanche's adversaries. Many of these men met dreadful ends, captured by Comanche warriors who gruesomely tortured them by staking them to the ground and using burning coals as part of their sadistic rituals. The Comanche would mock their suffering as they slowly succumbed, a stark warning to anyone who considered trespassing. Yet Jack Hayes was not one to be cowed by such threats. His formidable skills and military background earned him a place in the Texas Rangers. Hayes rapidly climbed the ranks, gaining admiration for his resilience and determination. While stationed near San Antonio, he forged a friendship with Flaco, a Lipan Apache chief with extensive knowledge of the Comanche. Their conversations enabled Hayes to gain valuable insights into Comanche warfare, which was celebrated for its speed, brutality, and intricate strategies, methods far more advanced than what most settlers or soldiers had ever faced. The tactics employed by the Comanche were strikingly different from those of the Apache or Waco tribes. Known for their deadly precision, the Comanche utilized a rotating formation of mounted warriors to execute their strikes. As each warrior approached the target, he would release an arrow before retreating to the back of the line, allowing him time to reload and prepare for another assault. Jack Hays frequently collaborated with Chief Flacco, a trusted leader of the Lipan Apache, who offered critical insights into Comanche strategies. Under Flacco's mentorship, Hays learned to track down raiding parties and confront the Comanche on their own terrain, adapting effectively to their fierce combat style. Hays's reputation soared, gaining him recognition not only among the Texians and Mexicans, but also within Comanche ranks. The Comanche acknowledged his skill and courage by dubbing him Captain Jack, Cap Yak, which translates to "too brave," a title bestowed with both admiration and trepidation. His deeds became legendary, resulting in bounties placed on his head by both Comanche war chiefs and Mexican officers, who viewed him as a formidable foe and a man not easily vanquished. While Hays was known for his calm demeanor and friendliness in daily life, he transformed completely when battle began. Accounts from both allies and enemies highlight how his demeanor shifted drastically in the heat of combat. His expression would harden, his posture would straighten, and his voice, distinct and steady, would issue commands with life or death stakes. Hays was deeply committed to the safety of his men, yet he displayed a readiness to risk his own life without a second thought. Amidst flying arrows and piercing screams, he remained fearless, charging headlong into the chaos. These attributes not only propelled Hays to rapid promotions within the Texas Rangers, but also cultivated fierce loyalty among those he led. On a pivotal summer morning, Hays directed his team of Rangers and Mexican gunslingers westward, pursuing a Comanche raiding party heading toward the mouth of Uvalde Canyon, located over 80 miles from San Antonio. There, he would engage his men in yet another intense skirmish. On July 1st, 1841, Hays and his team finally spotted the Comanche raiding party. Understanding the value of surprise, Hays commanded an immediate assault on the group, which consisted of about a dozen warriors. The Comanche, skilled as they were in combat, recognized when retreat was the wiser choice in the face of an unexpected attack, and often opted to avoid confrontations when the odds were unfavorable. This time was no different. As Hays and his Rangers closed in, the Comanche warriors, accompanied by one woman, scattered into the thick brush for cover. Without hesitation, Hays halted his horse, dismounted, and charged into the thicket with his rifle drawn. Two fellow Rangers followed him into the dense foliage. The trio pressed onward relentlessly as they chased their prey deeper into the undergrowth. Suddenly, a deadly volley of arrows flew toward the Rangers. Most of the arrows embedded themselves in tree trunks or glanced off branches, but enough struck true to disrupt their advance. All three Rangers were hit, one gravely injured, another seriously hurt, yet still able to fight, and Hays himself suffered a painful, though minor, wound to his finger. Hays quickly evaluated the situation. He instructed the most seriously injured Ranger to find cover and directed the others who were still able to move to retreat to safety. After confirming they were secured, Hays went back into the thicket, now armed with a double-barreled shotgun, determined to rescue his critically wounded comrade. Of the 12 Comanche warriors, only one was armed with a rifle. The rest relied on traditional weapons such as bows, arrows, tomahawks, and knives, highlighting the Comanches' dependence on their classic combat techniques. Enraged by the interruption of their raid, the Comanche charged at Hays and his men. The Rangers, with one armed with a shotgun and another severely injured, found themselves at a disadvantage. However, despite their injuries, the Comanche formed a battle line and surged through the dense brush, intent on overwhelming the Rangers. Used to swift and decisive maneuvers, they viewed the pair of wounded Rangers as easy targets. The two injured men in the thicket would typically pose no threat. However, Hayes was determined not to be easily defeated. He waited patiently for the perfect moment, observing as the Comanche closed in. When they were just 15 feet away, he suddenly sprang up and fired both barrels of his shotgun at the two nearest warriors. The second shot resonated through the thicket, prompting Hayes to drop the shotgun and draw his revolver. The sight of their fallen comrades combined with the force of Hayes's attack caused the Comanche to hesitate, providing him the opportunity he needed to safeguard his wounded comrade and regain control of the situation. Seizing the moment, Hayes quickly pulled his injured friend to safety and ordered the other Rangers to form a perimeter around the thicket, instructing them to shoot any Comanche attempting to flee. With a rifle in hand and fresh rounds in his revolver, Hayes charged back into the thicket, resolute to finish what had begun. Returning to his previous position, Hayes was engulfed in the scent of blood and gunpowder. For the next 3 hours, he systematically picked off the Comanche, eliminating them one by one. Wave after wave of attacks were met with precision as Hayes's rifle and revolver struck true. Every time a Comanche warrior attempted to advance, they were repelled by his relentless fire. As the sun began to set, only 2 figures remained in the thicket: Hayes and a Comanche warrior, alongside a woman captured amid the chaos. The once unified Comanche band lay scattered throughout the thicket, with 10 of their warriors slain in the fight. Just hours before, they had shared the warmth of a campfire and the comfort of a meal. Now, their lifeblood soaked into the gritty earth. Realizing he was surrounded and escape was futile, the last Comanche warrior braced for his end. He sang his death song, its mournful notes echoing against the canyon walls, a tribute to the spirit of the Comanche. With a calm resolve, he turned to the lone woman standing with him. He informed her that she would be taken captive, but must remain strong and conduct herself with dignity under the oppressive Texian rule. Taking a deep breath, he readied an arrow and, knowing his fate was sealed, advanced toward Hayes's position. His determination was unwavering. He aimed to take at least one Texian with him before he departed this world. Bloodied and coated in dust, Hayes had been anticipating this final confrontation. After eliminating the Comanche's companions, he was aware that the battle would not conclude until either he or the last warrior lay dead. He crouched low, tuning into the sound of the warrior's approaching footsteps. When the warrior came within 15 feet, Hayes stood up and aimed his revolver. The 2 injured men in the thicket would typically pose no threat. However, Hayes was determined not to be easily defeated. He waited patiently for the perfect moment, observing as the Comanche closed in. When they were just 15 feet away, he suddenly sprang up and fired both barrels of his shotgun at the 2 nearest warriors. The second shot resonated through the thicket, prompting Hayes to drop the shotgun and draw his revolver. The sight of their fallen comrades combined with the force of Hayes's attack caused the Comanche to hesitate, providing him the opportunity he needed to safeguard his wounded comrade and regain control of the situation. Seizing the moment, Hayes quickly pulled his injured friend to safety and ordered the other Rangers to form a perimeter around the thicket, instructing them to shoot any Comanche attempting to flee. With a rifle in hand and fresh rounds in his revolver, Hayes charged back into the thicket, resolute to finish what had begun. Returning to his previous position, Hayes was engulfed in the scent of blood and gunpowder. For the next 3 hours, he systematically picked off the Comanche, eliminating them one by one. Wave after wave of attacks were met with precision as Hayes's rifle and revolver struck true. Every time a Comanche warrior attempted to advance, they were repelled by his relentless fire. As the sun began to set, only 2 figures remained in the thicket: Hayes and a Comanche warrior, alongside a woman captured amid the chaos. The once unified Comanche band lay scattered throughout the thicket, with 10 of their warriors slain in the fight. Just hours before, they had shared the warmth of a campfire and the comfort of a meal. Now, their lifeblood soaked into the gritty earth. Realizing he was surrounded and escape was futile, the last Comanche warrior braced for his end. He sang his death song, its mournful notes echoing against the canyon walls, a tribute to the spirit of the Comanche. With a calm resolve, he turned to the lone woman standing with him. He informed her that she would be taken captive but must remain strong and conduct herself with dignity under the oppressive Texian rule. Taking a deep breath, he readied an arrow and, knowing his fate was sealed, advanced toward Hayes's position. His determination was unwavering. He aimed to take at least one Texian with him before he departed this world. Bloodied and coated in dust, Hayes had been anticipating this final confrontation. After eliminating the Comanche's companions, he was aware that the battle would not conclude until either he or the last warrior lay dead. He crouched low, tuning into the sound of the warrior's approaching footsteps. When the warrior came within 15 feet, Hayes stood up and aimed his revolver. The Comanche, however, was quicker. Just as Hayes pulled the trigger, the warrior released his arrow. It grazed Hayes's shoulder, sending him crashing onto his back. Despite the injury, the Comanche pressed forward, knife in hand and ready to strike. Wounded yet resolute, Hayes quickly regained his balance as the warrior approached. In a swift motion, he emptied his revolver into the Comanche, halting the final assault. The woman was taken captive, the horses reclaimed, and the bodies of the fallen Comanche left behind, their remains destined to be picked apart by wolves and coyotes. Following his encounters with the Comanche, Hayes faced other foes, including the Mexican Army, Apache, and Paiute. His reputation as a skilled leader and fighter grew, but life took a different turn when he relocated to San Francisco. There he became sheriff, responsible for maintaining law and order in a rapidly expanding city. Hayes also amassed wealth through ranching and real estate, establishing himself as a prominent member of the community. His legacy reached even those who had once been his adversaries, earning their respect until his passing. One of the most notable acknowledgments of his character came from Comanche Chief Buffalo Hump, who sent a golden spoon as a gift to celebrate the birth of Hayes's first son. This rare gesture exemplified the admiration Hayes had achieved, even from his staunchest enemies. In his later years, Hayes became one of the most celebrated figures of the American West, remembered not only for his fierce battles, but also for his significant contributions to the development of the frontier. In his later years, Hayes became one of the founding figures of Oakland, California. He passed away at the age of 67 and was interred at Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland, leaving a legacy marked by resilience and respect. Despite suffering significant losses in battle, the Comanche persisted in expanding their empire across the southern plains. They remained formidable warriors and ruled extensive territories until the 1870s, when their power diminished under the relentless pressure of U.S. military campaigns and forced relocations. Ultimately, they were confined to reservations, where they experienced poverty, discontent, and a decline in their cultural traditions. The struggle for Texas represented perhaps the most intense and brutal chapter in the Comanche's extensive history. Unlike any other conflict in North America, it was characterized by bloodshed and loss, and shaped by continuous warfare and resistance. The tales of Comanche victories, sorrowful defeats, and the aspirations for freedom they fought for are far too numerous to capture in a single narrative. Their decline marked a tragic period in the history of the Southern Plains, yet their legacy endures in the hearts and spirits of their descendants. The weaponry used by the Rangers underwent significant advancement. What started with basic single-shot pistols gradually transitioned to more powerful 5-shot revolvers with reloadable cylinders, providing them with a distinct advantage in battle. After years of relentless and brutal conflict, the Rangers evolved into a Spartan-like force, disciplined, skilled, and fueled by the instinct to survive. While they earned the admiration of the settlers they safeguarded, in 1841, the Texas Rangers were recognized as rugged individuals, molded by the harsh realities of frontier life. Absent their pivotal role, they would have felt out of place in civilized society. The Texas Rangers were far from the romanticized heroes depicted in tales. They were tough warriors, forged in the trials of conflict and necessity.